Chosen one. Stop right here. Heaven has paused everything to get this message to you. This is not another moment to scroll past. This is divine interception. You are not like the rest. You are set apart. You have been called, anointed, and positioned by God Himself. And right now, you are standing on the edge of a spiritual ambush. But before the enemy makes his move, heaven is moving first. You've been feeling something, haven't you? A heaviness in the atmosphere, a strange silence in your spirit, a subtle pressure that builds with every passing day. That's not random. That's not just stress. It's a signal. You are under spiritual surveillance, and the enemy is setting up a trap. But here's the truth. It will not prosper. Not if you respond now. You see, the enemy doesn't attack those who have nothing to offer. The fact that you're feeling this spiritual resistance is proof that your life is loaded with purpose. You carry something sacred, something eternal. And because of that, darkness has marked you, not to destroy you by power, but to trick you by silence, to lull you into passivity so that when the ambush springs, you're caught sleeping. But you won't sleep through this. Not this time. The voice of God is waking you up like thunder in the soul of the chosen. And you must understand, this ambush wasn't planned today. It was designed generations ago. It's ancient. It's precise. It's patterned. The same trap took down your bloodline before you, those who were chosen but didn't respond to the call. But you're different. You've been handpicked to break what they couldn't escape. There is something stirring in the spirit realm, and it's demanding your attention. No more delay. No more blending in. No more second guessing. This is your moment to rise, not in fear, but in clarity. This is your call to war, not with weapons of this world, but with the authority of heaven backing your voice. You don't fight this kind of battle with logic. You fight it with revelation. And right now, heaven is pouring out strategy. Listen and receive it. Your very survival depends on what you do next. It is written in the first letter of Peter, chapter 5, verse 8. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. This is not a time to be passive. This is not the hour to be numb. The enemy is watching. He's waiting. But your awareness disrupts his agenda. Your discernment cancels his secrecy. The moment you open your eyes and speak from your spirit, the trap begins to collapse. Let this be your confirmation. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. What you're feeling is real. You're picking up on demonic movement, and that sensitivity is your weapon. The enemy hopes you'll brush it off. But this is the time to press in. This ambush is not a surprise to God. In fact, He allowed you to feel the pressure so that you would rise with precision. You are not here to survive the attack. You are here to dismantle it. With your voice, with your obedience, with your declaration. And yes, I know there are moments you've felt tired, misunderstood, drained. You've questioned why the warfare has been so intense. It's because what you carry terrifies the enemy. It's not about who you are right now. It's about who you're becoming. You are a deliverer, a generational curse breaker, a prophetic voice in a time of confusion. And hell knows it. That's why you were targeted in silence. That's why this ambush was hidden behind routine, stress, confusion, and isolation. But heaven is flipping the script. So right now, I need you to make a bold move. This is not just another video. This is an altar of instruction. And here's what I want you to do. Comment the number 1,444 below. That's right, 1,444. It is not just a number. It is a prophetic symbol. 12 times 12, God's divine government multiplied and reinforced. Fourfold confirmation of angelic alignment. When you type it, you're saying, I come into agreement with heaven's warning. I cancel the ambush. I step into divine order. Let the enemy see your response. Let the darkness know you're awake. Let heaven hear your obedience echo through the spiritual realm. And if this word hit your spirit like lightning, if it burned in your heart with clarity, then share it. Send it to those who may be walking blindly into the same trap. Like this message, so it spreads faster. And subscribe. Not out of routine, but because more revelation is coming, and you cannot afford to miss it. You are not here by accident. You are not watching this by mistake. You are God's chosen one. And the trap set for your downfall is being exposed right now. The ambush was set while you slept, not in physical slumber, but in spiritual weariness, while your heart fought to remain faithful, while your hands kept working in silence, while your soul cried out behind the scenes. Something moved in the unseen. The enemy planted snares in quiet places, hoping you'd be too distracted, too drained, or too discouraged to notice. But God saw it first. That's the truth you need to hold on to before one plot was formed. God had already issued a warning. Before one trap was laid, angels were dispatched. Before the enemy whispered one lie, the Spirit had already stirred your senses. You felt it, the tension, the resistance, the sense that something isn't right. That's not a feeling. That's spiritual data. That's revelation wrapped in discomfort. This ambush didn't start yesterday. It's been growing quietly, invisibly, deliberately. The enemy has studied your rhythms. He knows when your guard is down. He knows how to twist fatigue into confusion and silence into spiritual disconnection. But what he didn't calculate was your spiritual sensitivity. What he didn't anticipate was that your discernment would survive the fatigue. There is a knowing within you that you can't explain. It kept tugging on you when everything seemed fine. It whispered, pray, when there was no clear threat. It nudged you to cancel plans, to withdraw from certain people, to guard your space, even when you didn't fully understand why. That was not anxiety. That was preparation. Because while you were distracted, while you were under pressure, while you were carrying more than most, the trap was being positioned. And yet, you're still here, still standing, still sensing, still seeing. Why? Because the grace on your life is stronger than the ambush around you. The enemy thought you would break before you noticed the pattern. He thought the delays would discourage you, that the isolation would drain you, that the pressure would confuse you. But heaven preserved your awareness. You may have been tired, but you never lost your spiritual pulse. You kept watching, even when you didn't understand everything. Your heart stayed aligned, and now you're seeing it. The cracks in the pattern, the hidden motives behind certain people, the spiritual heaviness behind certain situations, the timing of certain distractions. You're no longer reacting emotionally, you're reading spiritually. That's dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. According to the wisdom of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 3, The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. This word comes alive in you now, because what others walked into blindly, you've started to discern. What others dismissed as overthinking, you recognized as strategy, and now the enemy's blueprint is unraveling in your presence. See, the enemy didn't just want to discourage you, he wanted to disarm you. The snare was designed to weaken your vision, to dim your passion, to choke your ability to move forward. But you've entered a new space in the spirit. You're not just waking up, you're rising up. You're stepping into discernment, into fire, into authority. You're no longer asking, why is this happening to me? Now you're declaring, what is God revealing through this? That shift right there, that's what makes the trap collapse. When your pain becomes insight, when your resistance becomes intercession, when your confusion becomes clarity, the enemy loses ground. He expected your silence. He expected passivity. But now he's watching you rise with power. Quiet power. Stable power. Disciplined power. You're not making noise, you're making war. Let me tell you the truth. Not everyone around you can see what you see. That's intentional. Ambushes are avoided only by those who discern in advance. And God didn't give everyone that sensitivity, but He gave it to you. That's why He woke you up in the night. That's why He disrupted your peace. That's why He let the pressure mount. Not to crush you, but to summon you. Because there is no attack that can outrun a chosen one who is awake. You were not meant to stumble blindly into destruction. You were meant to see the snare, to name it, and to nullify it. And you will. You already are. This very moment, this revelation entering your spirit, is breaking something loose. Let every hidden trap be exposed. Let every silent assassin of your joy be disarmed. Let every unseen chain fall from your spirit. This ambush was meant to be your silence, but it's becoming your sound. It was meant to be your fall, but it's becoming your fire. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not lost. You are right on time for divine reversal. You're not crazy. You're under attack. What you've been sensing spiritually, emotionally, even physically, is real. The tiredness that won't go away, the heaviness that creeps in during quiet moments, the sudden waves of confusion, doubt, or even hopelessness. These are not symptoms of weakness. They are signs of warfare. Let this be clear. Spiritual attacks do not always come with flashing lights or obvious enemies. Sometimes they come wrapped in silence. Sometimes they come through ordinary days where everything feels off, but you can't explain why. And that's the weapon the enemy has chosen against you. In this hour, subtle sabotage. But now, heaven is pulling the veil back. You are not the only one who has felt like you're walking through fog. You are not alone in the invisible battle that tries to drain you before the day begins. This isn't burnout. It's a strategy. This is an ambush designed to wear down the saints. And you, God's chosen one, are standing in the center of it. What you're facing is not just fatigue. It's a spiritual interference meant to confuse your purpose. What looks like a loss of motivation is actually the enemy trying to mute your momentum. He knows that if he can exhaust your soul, he can paralyze your calling. If he can keep you guessing, he can keep you from advancing. But the moment you recognize the war, you regain the authority to win it. Let the lie break now. You're not weak, you're targeted. You're not lost, you're under watch. You're not confused, You're being opposed by unseen darkness that knows exactly what you carry. You've been entrusted with something holy. That's why the attacks don't make sense to the natural mind. The greater the calling, the greater the pressure, and yet, even through this pressure, you've remained. You didn't quit. You didn't fold. You didn't compromise your integrity for relief. And that right there, your obedience in silence, has made you even more dangerous to the enemy. This ambush is a response to your endurance. You've been consistent in prayer even when you heard nothing. You've kept walking even when the way was unclear. You've shown up even when your heart was breaking. And heaven has taken notice. So has hell. Because your consistency has been louder than any worship set. Your silence has spoken louder than any sermon. The enemy knows he couldn't scare you with storms, so now he's trying to seduce you into stillness, to get you to settle, to get you to shut up, to get you to say, "Maybe I imagined it all." But let the truth roar in your spirit now. You didn't imagine it. That dream you had, that word you received, that vision God gave you, it was real. And that's why the warfare is real. You're not just under attack. You're carrying fire. And fire doesn't go unnoticed in the spirit realm. So what do you do in a moment like this? You don't run. You don't hide. You don't pretend it's not happening. You recognize it. You confront it. You declare, "I'm not asleep anymore." Nelper. Because this kind of warfare doesn't require more strength, it requires more clarity. And now that the fog is lifting, your steps will become precise. Your prayers will become lethal. Your voice will carry weight again. As we find in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 19, "I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you." You are not helpless in this fight. You have been given authority. You have been granted power. But that power must be recognized and activated. And now is the time to activate it. Let the fire inside you respond. Let your spirit rise in resistance. This is not your breaking. This is your becoming. Now, I want you to do something simple, yet prophetic. Comment the phrase, "No more fog." Olus, 3 short words, but they signify a divine clarity. When you say it, you're declaring that the confusion is over, that the lies won't work anymore, that the veil has lifted, that your discernment has returned. You're standing up with vision again. No more fog. Olus, it's not just a comment. It's a declaration. It says, "I am not stumbling. I am not second-guessing. I am not blind to what's really going on." You're saying to every assignment of darkness, "I see through this, and I will not be caught off guard." Let the fog lift. Let clarity return. Let purpose speak louder than pressure. I walk with insight now, not instinct. I move with divine precision. You've been feeling it in the spirit, haven't you? That strange tension in the atmosphere, the invisible weight that presses on your chest, even when nothing seems wrong on the outside. The sudden wake-ups in the middle of the night, not from fear, but from something deeper. A knowing, a warning, a spiritual vibration that won't let you rest the same way you used to. You're not imagining it. This is the burden of the chosen. While others are content to sleep through seasons of spiritual danger, you feel the shift. While others call it coincidence, you sense it as divine disturbance. And that disturbance is not punishment, it's protection. It's how heaven signals that the battleground is active. that the enemy is moving, and that your role is not to retreat, but to perceive and prepare. There are certain things you don't need to be told, because your spirit already knows. The Lord has given you a radar. You sense what others explain only after it's happened. You detect the motive behind the smile. You pick up on the shadow behind the opportunity. You feel the delay before the detour becomes obvious. This sensitivity isn't weakness, it's your warfare advantage. The world may call it intuition. The flesh may call it anxiety. But the Spirit of God calls it discernment. And when you're chosen, discernment becomes your compass through demonic fog. Some of the strangest shifts in your mood lately weren't emotional, they were spiritual. The irritability out of nowhere, the random disconnection from people you once felt close to, the urge to withdraw, the sudden desire to fast. These weren't just mood swings. They were spiritual alarms going off. The Spirit was moving you out of danger, calling you out of circles infected by sabotage, drawing you out of shallow waters into deeper ground. Because make no mistake, the ambush was near, and you, though tired, though tested, were not blind to it. You felt it before it formed. You sensed it before it surfaced. And that knowing in your spirit, that's the fingerprint of the Holy Spirit. There are battles you avoided simply because you trusted the uneasy feeling. There are people who were removed, not because they wronged you outwardly, but because your spirit read something that your eyes couldn't yet see. You didn't need the evidence. You had the witness. That's the gift of spiritual sensitivity. It won't always come with clarity, but it will always come with consistency. And now, in this season, God is sharpening it, because the deeper you go into your assignment, the more precise you must become. There are some traps that only sensitivity can save you from. There are some battles that only discernment can prevent, and you've been gifted both. It's no wonder the enemy has been targeting your sensitivity. He wants you numb, distracted, oversaturated, overstimulated. Because when your spirit is overwhelmed by noise, it becomes harder to feel the whisper of heaven. And the enemy knows if you can't feel the shift, you'll walk straight into the snare. But your awareness has survived. The fire in your belly is still burning. And even when you tried to silence it, even when you questioned yourself, God never took back the gift. He let the ache remain. Because that ache is holy. It was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, as recorded in chapter 6, verse 17. I appointed watchmen over you, and said, listen to the sound of the trumpet. But you said, we will not listen. But you, chosen one, you have listened. You didn't ignore the trumpet. You didn't brush off the warning. You heard the whisper before the warfare hit. You obeyed the impulse even when it didn't make sense. That is why you're still standing. That is why you haven't been swallowed. Spiritual sensitivity is not about knowing everything. It's about responding when heaven moves. It's about following the tug, even when it's inconvenient. And you have done that. Quietly, faithfully, repeatedly. That is spiritual maturity. That is prophetic obedience. And that is what makes you a threat. The reason you've been feeling such heavy shifts in your spirit is not because you're weak. It's because you're in range of something holy. The veil is thin. The next instruction is close. And the enemy is nervous. So stay alert. Stay aligned. Trust what you sense more than what you see. The shaking is not to scare you. It's to awaken you. You are not paranoid. You are discerning. You are not emotional. You are prophetic. You are not unstable. You are in transition. The earth is groaning. Heaven is speaking, and your spirit is tuned to hear it. Don't brush it off. What you're feeling is real. This is no ordinary battle. This is ancient. You may think the resistance you're facing started a few weeks ago, or a few months back. But no, this battle has roots that run deeper than your present circumstances. What you're fighting now didn't begin with you. It began generations ago. Before you ever took your first breath, your name was already echoing in the spiritual realm, and hell has been trembling ever since. You've stepped into a war that predates your existence, but it is destined to end with your obedience. The warfare you're facing didn't suddenly appear. It's inherited. It's strategic. The same demons that whispered to your mother, tempted your father, destroyed your grandparents. Those same spirits recognize the anointing on your life, and they are desperate to repeat their pattern, but they will not succeed. Why? Because you've been marked to break it. You are the interruption to the generational narrative. You are the first in your line to see clearly, to fight spiritually, to say, "This ends with me." And that declaration terrifies darkness, because you're not just surviving what others collapsed under, you're confronting it head-on, with authority. This is why the pressure has been so relentless. This is why the patterns of disappointment tried to repeat themselves back to back, in a cycle that made you question your faith. The enemy is not creative, he is repetitive. He only knows cycles, but God gives revelation, and you are not a victim of the past. You are the chosen vessel to break it. What you're facing is older than your pain. It's tied to the assignment God placed on your family line, one that went unanswered for generations. But now, here you are, wounded. Yes. Tested. Yes. But awake, and willing, and aware. That alone makes you more powerful than anyone who came before you. This isn't just about your deliverance. It's about everything and everyone connected to your obedience. When you say yes to God, something ancient breaks. Something buried is resurrected. Something forgotten is restored. This is the power of spiritual legacy, and it's why the ambush against you has been so specific, so strategic, so quietly violent. The enemy couldn't stop the calling, so he tried to confuse the vessel. But what he didn't know is that the shaking would produce clarity, that the breaking would create oil, that your pain would become prophetic. You're not walking through random warfare, you're walking through prophecy being fulfilled. Every sleepless night, every tear that hit the floor, every moment you felt misunderstood or alone, heaven saw it. And even now, the Spirit of God is saying, keep going, keep pressing. You are making history in the Spirit. It is written in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 22, verse 30. I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, so I would not have to destroy it. But I found no one. But what the enemy uses to curse through generations, God redeems through one obedient heart. That heart is yours. You are rewriting the spiritual story of your bloodline. This is why your obedience matters. This is why your presence here right now is not random. Heaven orchestrated this moment. And whether you've been part of this movement for a while, or you just arrived here today, I want to say this to you clearly. You are not watching by accident. You are not hearing this by chance. If this message has pierced your spirit, if something deep inside you is being confirmed, stirred, or reignited, then you're already part of something bigger than yourself. And I want to invite you to stay connected. There is more coming. Heaven keeps downloading fresh instruction. And these messages will keep flowing. But you've got to stay in the flow. So, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe right now. Not for vanity, but because this is one of the few places where God is calling His remnant together. His hidden ones, His chosen. Click that like button, not just to boost visibility, but to agree in the Spirit. Let the algorithm serve the anointing. Share this with someone you love, especially those who've been feeling spiritually overwhelmed. You never know who's one message away from breakthrough. And if this word ministered to you in a deep way, consider supporting this ministry. Even a small gift helps us reach more of God's chosen ones across the nations. There are souls waiting. There are cries unheard. And your seed helps us carry the sound of deliverance to those still trapped in darkness. But above all, above every button you could click or gift, you could send God what's happening in your spirit right now. Something ancient is breaking. Something eternal is being rebuilt. You've stepped into divine alignment. The warfare is real, but your purpose is older, and your surrender has more power than any curse. You are God's chosen one, and the line of defeat ends with you. Delay is not safety, it's dangerous. Many of God's chosen ones have been lulled into believing that waiting just a little longer, delaying obedience just a little more. Isn't that serious? That maybe tomorrow is fine, that maybe next month will feel better. But listen carefully. Delay is a spiritual doorway. And in this season, that door is not opening to mercy, it's opening to ambush. The enemy operates in subtlety. He doesn't always come with fire and noise. Sometimes, he comes with the suggestion, you don't have to move yet. You still have time. Wait until things are clearer. And if you believe that voice, you'll stay still in a time when movement is required. You'll become passive in a moment that demands prophetic boldness. Let this land in your spirit. Delayed obedience is disobedience. Heaven is not just waiting for your willingness. Heaven is watching your timing. Because in spiritual warfare, there are windows of victory, and when you miss them, the consequences don't wait. The trap doesn't pause because you're unsure. The demonic assignment doesn't postpone itself because you're tired. If you hesitate while heaven is saying, move, you walk straight into the ambush already laid for your delay. Many before you made this mistake. They were anointed, gifted, called but passive. They assumed tomorrow would be like today. They thought the nudge to act wasn't urgent. But by the time they decided to move, the opening had closed. And the enemy had already adjusted his plan. Delay cost them more than time. It cost them territory. But you, chosen one, you're not called to repeat the mistake. You've been given discernment for a reason. That stirring in your spirit isn't anxiety. It's divine urgency. That heaviness that won't lift is not because you're overwhelmed. It's because heaven is alerting you to something coming. And you can't afford to move late. You don't get to move on your own clock. The cloud is moving. The Spirit is leading. And your obedience must match His rhythm. It's written in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. End of doe. And some of you are out of sync with the season because you've mistaken stillness for safety. But in this hour, silence can become surrender. Inaction can become agreement. If God is calling you to war, Your delay is handing territory to the enemy. Every time you hear God and do nothing, something dark takes permission to move forward. That's why the warfare has been intensifying, not just to stop you, but to wear you down so you stop yourself. The spirit of delay is one of hell's most successful agents. It doesn't attack with fear. It attacks with apathy. It lulls you to sleep with the illusion of comfort. You'll be fine. No need to rush. You're not ready. That voice is not peace, it's poison. Delay has a cost, and it's higher than you think. It costs you alignment. It costs you clarity. It costs you covering. Because some protection is only present in obedience. Some authority is only activated in motion. There are levels of spiritual breakthrough that will never be released to the still, only to the surrendered. Do not underestimate the power of right timing. There is something God is requiring of you now, not later, not when things settle, not after you feel more confident. Now, you were not born for passive survival. You were born for radical obedience. And today, yes, this very moment is a crossroads. What you decide in this window determines whether you walk into freedom or fall into a setup. The ambush isn't waiting for your convenience, and neither is heaven. So here's what you must do. Respond. Let God find you obedient before the threat becomes visible. Let the enemy see you moving before the snare tightens. Let the realm of the Spirit know you're not drifting anymore. You're locked in. This is your moment to say, I break the grip of delay. And to mark this shift in the Spirit, I want you to comment the number 441 below. That's right, 441. It's not random. It is a number of divine interruption. 4 for stability. 4, again, for confirmation. And 1 for obedience, the first act that disrupts delay and reclaims momentum. When you type it, you're saying, I will not miss my moment. I choose movement. I choose God's timing. Don't scroll past this part. Don't put this off. Comment 441 now. Let it be written in the Spirit that you moved when others hesitated, that you obeyed when others debated, that you heard the warning and refused to wait for visible danger. Delay ends today. Move now before the trap finishes forming. This is how they fell, not with a loud scream or dramatic collapse. No, it started slowly. A mist prompting here, a small compromise there, a moment of silence when the Spirit said, speak. A casual agreement with something that didn't quite feel right. Not rebellion. At first, just hesitation. Just delay. Just comfort, chosen over calling. The ones who came before you, many of them were chosen too. They were marked. They were anointed. Some even had greater platforms and louder voices than you do now. But what they didn't have was consistency in obedience. And that inconsistency gave the ambush permission to grow. The enemy doesn't always rush. He studies. He waits. He works in slow erosion. He waits until purpose becomes performance, until fire becomes formality, until obedience becomes optional. Then, at the moment of spiritual fatigue, when the urgency has faded and the passion has dimmed, the ambush springs, and the fall happens. But by then, the root system of disobedience had already been growing for months, sometimes years. You need to hear this. Not every fall happens from failure. Some happen from familiarity. When sacred things become common, when prophetic warnings become background noise, when people who carry fire start playing with shadows. You were never meant to follow that path. But it's important you see it for what it is. Look at your bloodline. How many voices were muted because of compromise? How many callings were buried in comfort? How many destinies went dormant because the cost of obedience became too high? This is not about judgment. This is about awareness. Because if you don't understand how they fell, you won't recognize when the same pattern begins to unfold in you. Satan doesn't need to reinvent his methods. He just hopes you won't study the history. He hopes you won't see the repetition. He's counting on your forgetfulness. But here you are waking up in the middle of a battlefield that's been hidden in your DNA. And now, the question is, will you repeat it or will you break it? Let me be clear, you are not cursed. You are called. But calling alone doesn't cancel traps. Only obedience does. Those who fell weren't failures in God's eyes, but many of them refused correction. They didn't fall because they weren't loved. They fell because they didn't listen. And love without obedience will still lead to loss. The danger of being chosen is assuming that your anointing will protect you from consequences. It won't. Saul was chosen. So was Judas. So was Samson. So was Demas. The oil on your life doesn't excuse disobedience. It increases responsibility. And God has been whispering. He's been warning. He's been trying to get your attention through delays, strange spiritual weight, and dreams you don't fully understand. Why? Because he loves you too much to let you walk into what destroyed those before you. You are not being punished. You are being preserved. And preservation often looks like painful clarity. It's not easy to admit that some of your steps have started to resemble theirs. It's not easy to acknowledge the distractions you've entertained or the spiritual weight you've started ignoring. But this is not the time to fake strength. This is the time to return to the fire. Because the same enemy who watched them fall is watching you rise. And he's trying to reroute you before you can finish the assignment. But hear this, you are not them. You've been given their wisdom as warning, their stories as scaffolding, their mistakes as mirrors. And right now, heaven is giving you what they ignored, a chance to reset before it's too late. It is written in the book of Hebrews, chapter 3, verse 15. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion. No, this is the day of decision. Not because you're near judgment, but because you're near destiny. And the closer you get, the more strategic the pressure becomes. The ambush isn't punishment, it's opposition to the assignment. God didn't expose the patterns of the past so you could feel ashamed. He exposed them so you could stand above them, so you could break the cycle, so you could write a new script. The old narrative ends with you. You are not destined to fall the way they did. You will obey where they hesitated. You will discern where they doubted. You will rise where they retreated. You've seen enough. You've learned enough. And now, you've been warned enough. This is your line in the sand. Let it be said of you, they saw the pattern and they broke it. Your light exposes the ambush. That's why the attack feels personal. That's why the resistance has been strange. And the tension around you, unexplainable. You're not doing anything wrong, you're doing something right. You're not a magnet for chaos, you are a disruptor of darkness. And darkness cannot remain comfortable where light is increasing. It's not your personality they hate, it's your presence. Because when you walk into a room, the atmosphere starts shifting. Not because you speak loudly, But because your spirit carries weight, you bring conviction into spaces that have grown numb. You bring clarity where confusion has been thriving, and that makes you a threat. You carry something you didn't ask for, but heaven entrusted it to you anyway, exposing what's been hidden. That's why spiritual warfare rises up before you even act. That's why people withdraw or turn on you without explanation. It's not always them, it's the spirit operating behind them. Agitated by the light you carry, you are not just a person, you are a revealer, a flashlight in the hands of God. And the enemy hates that about you. See, the enemy's greatest strategy isn't always destruction, it's secrecy. If he can keep his plans hidden, if he can keep people blind, then the darkness continues, uncontested. But when someone like you walks in, someone sensitive, someone obedient, someone spiritually awake, his plans get interrupted. You reveal what others overlook. You notice what others excuse. You discern what others ignore. And that's why the ambush intensified as your awareness deepened. The more clearly you started seeing, the more violently the opposition came. But that's not a coincidence. It's confirmation. Hell never panics over a sleeping Christian, but it trembles when a watcher wakes up. You've been waking up, little by little, step by step. The fog is lifting. The discernment is growing sharper. You're seeing through motives. You're feeling the shift in people's tone. You're recognizing patterns that repeat with different faces. That's not paranoia. That's prophetic vision being activated. And it's dangerous to the realm of darkness, because your very presence confronts deception. And deception cannot stand long when truth walks into the room. This is why you felt the tension increase in spaces that used to feel familiar. You're no longer blind to what's been tolerated. You're no longer compatible with spiritual compromise. You're no longer able to stay quiet when your spirit starts vibrating with warning. You don't even have to say much. Your silence carries weight. Your absence exposes what your presence used to cover. You've grown. You've shifted. And now you're triggering everything that was content to stay hidden. Don't shrink back because of the pressure. That pressure is evidence of your increase. It is written in the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 20. Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. This is spiritual law. Wherever true light shows up, hidden things get restless. And right now, the enemy is restless because you're not afraid to shine. You didn't ask for the mantle, but it found you. You didn't chase the fire, but it chose you. And now that you carry it, you can't walk like everyone else. You can't compromise like you used to. The price is too high. You're a walking disruption to hell's systems, a living rebuke to passive religion. And whether you realize it or not, your very presence is prophetic. This is why some people can't get close to you anymore. It's not rejection, it's revelation. Their spirits recognize the holiness rising in you, and they're not ready for what your life reveals about theirs. Let them walk. You're not losing connection, you're gaining purity. The more you walk in truth, the more heaven trusts you with it. That's why your discernment is increasing. That's why you've been sensing things before they manifest. That's why people's motives have been clear to you lately, almost painfully so. The light has increased, and the greater the light, the clearer the battlefield. This isn't a punishment. It's positioning. God is trusting you with sight, with sensitivity, with a level of exposure that brings divine disruption to every demonic plot. But here's the secret. You don't even have to fight like others do. Your obedience does the work. Your alignment carries the weight. Just standing where God puts you exposes what the enemy has worked years to hide. You are a revealer. You are a breaker of silence. You are light in dark places. And when your light exposes the trap cannot hold you. This is why the warfare comes before the breakthrough, because darkness tries to strike before it's fully exposed. But it's too late. You've already seen it. You're already shining. You're already walking in what they tried to bury. And because of that, the ambush will fail. The ambush spirit doesn't always show up with violence. It shows up with patterns. And unless you're spiritually awake, it will feel normal, familiar, even justified. But this is not just opposition. This is a carefully crafted strategy that has taken down many before you. And now, it's trying to find an opening in you. There's a specific pattern this ambush spirit follows. It's not chaotic. It's calculated, designed to wear down the chosen slowly until they begin to sabotage themselves from the inside out. It almost always starts with accusation, whispers in the dark. You're not enough. You're not doing it right. You should be further by now. These are not your thoughts, they're fiery darts, coated in shame, dipped in comparison, and launched straight into your identity. If the enemy can distort how you see yourself, he can disrupt how you respond to God. Once accusation takes root, isolation follows. Suddenly, the very people who could speak life into you seem distant. You withdraw not just from them, but from prayer, from worship, from your place of strength. The enemy doesn't just want you alone physically. He wants you silent spiritually. Because if he can disconnect you from communion, he can cut you off from covering. And finally, when accusation and isolation have done their work, comes exhaustion, spiritual, mental, emotional weariness. Not the kind that a nap can fix, but the kind that makes you want to give up, even when you still believe. You start losing your grip on clarity. You question your calling. You begin to think, maybe I'm not called after all. And the trap closes around your fatigue. This is not random. It's a formula. And if you've been feeling these three things, internal accusation, emotional withdrawal, and soul-level exhaustion, then hear this clearly. You are under ambush. But recognition is half the victory. Because the moment you can name it, you strip it of its mystery. And without mystery, it loses manipulation. You are not what the accusation says. You are not alone in this battle. And you are not too tired to rise. You were born to expose this exact pattern, because once you recognize it in yourself, you'll begin to see it in others, and you'll be the voice that pulls them back from the edge. Your story will be their exit. The enemy thrives in silence, but your deliverance begins with acknowledgement. And the moment you declare, "This is not me, it's warfare," you start to recover what was taken, as recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 41. Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's the key, not unaware. God doesn't just want you free, he wants you informed, equipped, wise to the patterns of hell, so they can never deceive you again. So, if you're feeling the burn of accusation, the ache of loneliness, or the weight of fatigue, know this: you are not weak. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are chosen, and you've been under fire. But now, you're waking up to the scheme. You're seeing the signs. You're not drifting, you're discerning. And that discernment is turning the battle. The same exhaustion that tried to bury you is now fueling your cry. The same isolation that tried to mute you is now pushing you toward divine connection. And the same accusations that tried to shame, you are now being silenced by the truth rising inside your spirit. You are not crazy. You are not done. You are not alone. You are standing in a moment of divine clarity. And I want you to mark that moment in the spirit. Comment these words below. Pattern ends now. 1, 3 words, but they carry fire. When you type them, you are testifying in the spiritual realm that the cycle has been exposed and you will not play along. You are drawing a line in the sand. You are declaring war on the scheme. And heaven takes note of your agreement. Pattern ends now. 1. It means no more manipulation through emotion. No more false guilt. No more lonely drifting. No more wearing yourself out to prove your worth. You're done with the ambush script. You've read the enemy's playbook and you're closing it for good. Now, your clarity becomes your weapon, and your weapon becomes someone else's deliverance. This is how the pattern ends: with your awareness, with your voice, with your fire. And the fire is here now. Stop scrolling. Stop searching. Stop second-guessing. This moment has found you for a reason. You didn't stumble here. You've been drawn, pulled by the Spirit into a divine intersection, because what's been attacking you in secret is about to be dealt with in the open. There's something happening right now. Chosen one. You are standing in the middle of a turning point. And what you choose to engage with in this moment determines whether the ambush continues or collapses. You see, the enemy didn't just send resistance against you, he's been trying to send silence into your spirit. That slow, numbing silence. The kind that makes you stop praying, stop worshipping, stop standing. He's after your spiritual voice. Because your voice is what unlocks victory. Not shouting in the natural, but alignment in the spirit. There are moments in life when heaven requires your response, not to earn God's love, but to activate His authority through your agreement. This is one of those moments. Hell knows what happens when a chosen one starts to speak again. When they open their mouth in obedience, when they stop hesitating. That's why your voice has been under such attack. That's why your clarity's been shaken. That's why the ambush didn't show up in full force. It tried to mute you first. But now, God is reversing the silence with sound. You've been fed long enough. You've received words, warnings, confirmations. But now comes the moment of participation. There is a prophetic counterstrike prayer that must come out of your spirit. Because the ambush won't just break by knowing it's there. It breaks when you rise in your authority and speak against it. It is written in the book of Job, chapter 22, verse 28. You will also declare a thing, and it will be established for you. So light will shine on your ways. What you declare in this moment will shift something in the spirit realm. This isn't emotional hype. This is spiritual technology. The word doesn't say wish a thing. It says declare a thing. And when you declare in alignment with God's will, heaven establishes it. So why is this message different? Why now? Because the trap that was planted days ago, weeks ago, in some cases even years ago, is beginning to close. And this moment of obedience, this one divine response, is what breaks the lock before it clicks shut. But listen, this word isn't just for you. There are others in your circle, your family, your life, silently fighting battles they don't have language for. This word might be their lifeline too. So do something bold, like this video, not for vanity, not for clicks, but to agree with the Spirit. Click that button as an act of yes to the voice of God. Share it with one person who's been under silent pressure. This isn't just encouragement, it's rescue. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because what's coming next will require instructions, the kind that don't come from YouTube's algorithm, but from heaven's timing. There are more prayers, more alerts, more moments like this, and you don't want to miss them. And if this message has pierced your soul, if you felt God speaking directly to your situation, then consider this: sow where you've been fed. If you're led to, give, not because of manipulation, but because obedience is always fertile soil. Your generosity fuels this movement. It allows us to keep sounding the alarm to the remnant, to the ones hidden in darkness, to God's chosen, ones scattered across the nations, many of whom are one word away from breaking free. But most of all, let this moment move you to pray. Don't just nod your head. Don't just feel goosebumps. Let your spirit engage. This next minute is holy ground. Right where you are, right now, this is the sound that breaks ambushes. Father, in the name of Jesus, I cancel every hidden assignment against my life. I expose every trap set in silence. I bind every lie whispered in darkness. I command every demonic delay to break. I come into agreement with heaven. I declare divine protection, divine reversal, divine clarity. My steps are ordered. My spirit is awake, and my voice carries weight in the spirit realm. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. The ambush collapses now. In Jesus' name, Amen. Long. That wasn't just words. That was war. That was fire. That was you, rising into your calling. And the moment you prayed it, something shifted. A chain weakened. A trap cracked. A veil lifted. You may not feel it yet in the natural, but in the spirit. The rupture has begun. So hold fast. Stay alert. And don't disconnect. More is coming. And you're not alone in this. We're building something here. A remnant. A prophetic army of voices that refuse to be silenced. And you, chosen one, are part of it. Declare this prophetic counterstrike prayer, not from fear, but from revelation. You're not praying because you're losing. You're praying because you've located the battle. And when you locate the battle, you can release the strike that heaven has been waiting for. This isn't just another prayer you whisper to feel better. This is a declaration forged in discernment and fire. A prayer built for dismantling what the enemy has spent years designing. A prophetic counterattack that carries the weight of your obedience and the authority of your identity. You are not praying to beg. You are praying to break. You are not pleading for mercy. You are activating justice. God does not respond to pity. He responds to alignment. And when your mouth comes into agreement with heaven's purpose, the earth must adjust accordingly. This is why the enemy has worked so hard to keep you silent, passive, uncertain, because he knows that one sound from a chosen one, released in faith and precision, has the power to overturn spiritual infrastructure. Let that settle. One sound from your spirit can shake what's been standing in your way for years. There are demonic systems that have remained because you have not yet spoken against them. You've cried about them. You've journaled around them. You've even fasted in frustration. But now, it's time to declare. It's time to name the assignment and cancel its permission to function. And you don't need a title. You don't need a pulpit. You don't need a crowd. You just need conviction. A firm stance in the spirit. A refusal to tolerate what was sent to trap you. Because when a chosen one prays under divine instruction, heaven backs every syllable. This kind of prayer is not about length, it's about weight. It carries truth like a hammer. It strikes through the veil of confusion. It calls angels to attention. It rebukes demonic whispers. It breaks agreements made in fear. It silences voices that have camped in your mind too long. You were not created to live beneath a cloud of unseen sabotage. You were not designed to move forward while traps form at your feet. That's why God is calling you to lift your voice, because there are things in motion that only your voice can reverse. There are people depending on this moment, not just you. Others connected to your destiny. Others whose warfare will intensify if you remain still. You are not just praying for survival. You are praying for legacy, for territory, for deliverance that runs through your bloodline and breaks open space for others to walk through. This is what the enemy fears, not just a strong you, but an awakened you, a praying you, a declaring you, a spirit-led, heaven-aligned version of you that doesn't tolerate spiritual fog, but commands the clouds to clear. It is recorded in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 10. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Oh, this is not metaphor, it's mission. You have been appointed to uproot what doesn't belong, to tear down systems built on lies, to overthrow ambushes that looked like delay, and then, yes, then to build and plant something new, something that cannot be shaken, something that doesn't carry the residue of fear. But nothing can be built until something is torn down. So open your mouth, not with hesitation, but with fire. The Spirit will meet you there. The words may start trembling, but they will end roaring. You are not a servant hiding in shadows. You are a warrior standing on sacred ground. You've been warned. You've been awakened. You've been sharpened. And now this is your release. Speak against the ambush. Prophesy the collapse of every false setup. Rebuke every shadow that's lingered near your assignment. Declare reversal. And let heaven establish it. This is not a performance. This is war. And your voice is the first blow. This is where everything begins to shift, not in the scene first, but in the spirit. The words you release today will echo beyond this moment. Every stronghold that has stood in defiance to your destiny is now trembling. The atmosphere is changing, not because you tried harder, but because you aligned deeper. Don't underestimate what just happened. When you speak with heaven's authority, hell's structure begins to collapse. Chains don't always shatter with noise, they shatter with clarity. And today, clarity returned to you. You saw the ambush. You declared the counterstrike. And now, the unraveling of darkness has begun. There are moments when heaven initiates reversal, not because you begged long enough, not because you fasted hard enough, but because the time has come and the judge has spoken. That moment, chosen one, is now. You've been under pressure. You've walked through storms with your head down and your faith barely intact. You've endured what others didn't see. And you've kept moving while your heart was breaking. You didn't stop, even when everything in you wanted to. But what you didn't know was that your obedience was building a case in the courts of heaven. Every moment you resisted compromise, every time you chose righteousness over convenience, every time you kept worshiping when you felt abandoned, those became your testimony. And now, that testimony is crying out, and the Judge of all creation has heard. The Spirit of God is declaring, the reversal has been released. You are standing in the shift, the turning of tides, the flipping of outcomes. What was meant to crush you is about to carry you forward. The same pressure that almost broke you is now birthing power in you. And this reversal won't be subtle. It will be visible, evident, unmistakable. Where there was confusion, clarity. Where there was delay, divine acceleration. Where there was rejection, divine appointment. Where there was warfare, establishment. Don't be surprised when the doors that slammed shut begin to creak open again, not because the situation changed, but because heaven has ruled differently this time. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 7, "Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion. And instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance." Devon, this is not motivation. This is prophecy. And it's personal. God is not just reversing outcomes, He is restoring honor. Everything that tried to label you as too late, too broken, too inconsistent is being silenced. The spirit of shame is being cast down. You're stepping into not just recovery, but recognition. Yes, the same people who dismissed you will witness your appointment. And no, this isn't revenge, it's redemption. God is about to show through your life what He can do with someone who refuses to quit. You didn't need a platform. You didn't need applause. All you needed was consistency. And now, the seed of that consistency is rising. What was hidden is about to be highlighted. What was stolen is being restored with interest. What was ignored is now being honored. There's a reason the warfare got worse right before this. Hell fights loudest before the reversal is announced. And if you've been under that pressure lately, understand it wasn't your fault. It was your turning point. You were minutes away from breakthrough and didn't even know it. But God knew, and He held it, protected it, guarded your portion until the moment was right. And now it's here. This is not your reward for being perfect. This is your inheritance for staying faithful. The ambush was meant to steal your voice, but the reversal is restoring your roar. The delay was meant to make you doubt, but the reversal is proving God never left your side. The enemy thought he won because it looked quiet on the surface. But in silence, God was building evidence. And now, the gavel has dropped in heaven. The ruling is final. Reversal has begun. So I want you to mark this moment in the Spirit. Set a prophetic reminder. Comment the number 855 below. Yes, 855. Why this number? Because 8 represents new beginnings, and 5 grace, doubled. God's undeserved favor multiplied in your favor. When you type 855, you are saying, I agree with heaven's reversal. I step into divine recompense. I walk under multiplied grace. And it may not make sense to those around you, but heaven knows what just shifted. and the enemy can no longer unseat what heaven has established. You are no longer begging for favor. You are walking in it. No more shame. No more delay. No more fear. The reversal has come, and your life will never look the same. Comment 855 now, and let this moment be recorded in the spirit forever. The atmosphere around you has changed. The verdict has been rendered, and what was once against you must now serve you. Doors that were sealed shut are being commanded open, not by force, but by divine right. You are not stepping into favor, you're stepping into what was always yours. The tables are turning, and the witnesses of your warfare will now become witnesses of your reward. This is a holy shift. Do not doubt it. Don't shrink back. Walk boldly. Walk freely. Walk, knowing that heaven has ruled in your favor. The ambush has failed. The reversal has begun. The rest is glory. The spirit of reversal is being released. But this reversal is not simply circumstantial, it is spiritual, prophetic, and generational. You must understand, when God flips what the enemy meant for evil, He doesn't just hand you back what was taken, He rewrites the storyline. He resets the spiritual authority of everything tied to your life. That means this is more than breakthrough. This is reformation. Heaven is not just healing what was wounded. It is reordering what was misaligned. This is why the warfare has been so prolonged. The pressure wasn't about the problem. It was about the principality behind it. The enemy wasn't fighting your circumstances. He was resisting your rise. Because when God reverses a thing in your life, it sends a ripple into every place your feet will tread. It echoes into your family, your calling, your city, even your future descendant. The enemy knew that. That's why the ambush was so surgical. But the reversal has been activated, and now heaven is enforcing what hell can no longer deny. There are things that have tried to follow you into this season that don't have legal ground anymore. The anxiety that keeps creeping in, the confusion, the fear, the cycle of almost making it. Those are not personality traits. They are expired contracts. And the Spirit of God is tearing them up in the courts of heaven. You don't owe those patterns your silence anymore. You don't owe that pain your loyalty. It is no longer your companion. It is your history. And your history has no permission to dictate your future. This is why you've been sensing such spiritual tension lately. Because a reversal is not gentle. It is violent in the spirit. It overturns what hell established. It confronts what was tolerated. It corrects what was misnamed. And when it comes, it doesn't just deliver you, it disturbs everything around you that was aligned with bondage. That's why some people are becoming uncomfortable around you. That's why certain environments feel tighter. That's why the same doors that once welcomed you now resist your presence. You've shifted. The atmosphere hasn't caught up yet, but it will. Because reversal is not just favor, it is fire. It burns down the old order to establish heaven's original intent. And what's rising in your life now is not familiar. You haven't seen this version of yourself yet. This is not a repeat of your last season. This is not recycled grace. This is resurrection. The ashes of who you were are giving way to the authority of who you were always meant to be. It is spoken in the book of Genesis, chapter 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. And Joseph didn't just survive betrayal. He didn't just escape prison. He rose to power so that others could live. That's the kind of reversal you're walking into now. Not just a personal recovery, but a positioning for impact. That's why the enemy fought so hard. Because your reversal is not just about your freedom, it's about your function. You were never meant to just recover and disappear. You were meant to rise and rebuild. To be a deliverer for others who wouldn't have made it if you stayed silent. And now that heaven has ruled, the enemy is being forced to retreat. Every lie, every delay, every strategic setup that once had influence, it's losing access. Because your alignment is shifting your authority, what used to intimidate you now fears your movement. What used to drain you now flees from your presence. Because your reversal has made you dangerous. You no longer walk into rooms wondering if you belong. You walk knowing you've been sent. You no longer question your worth. You carry your weight in the spirit with certainty. The reversal didn't just give you your voice back, it gave you your sight. And now that you see clearly, nothing can blind you again. This is the beauty of divine reversal. It doesn't restore what was, it reveals what always should have been. Your name was never tied to failure. Your destiny was never meant for delay. Your purpose was never at the mercy of people's opinions. And now, every false label is being stripped. Every lie is being reversed. Every shadow is being lit up. God has flipped the script. And the next chapter is one only you can walk out. Not the old version of you, not the surviving version of you, but the rebuilt you, the anointed you, the commissioned you. The reversal is not coming. It is here. Heaven's court has ruled in your favor. You may not have heard the verdict in the natural, but the shift is already echoing in the spirit. The opposition you've been facing hasn't just been circumstantial, it's been legal. The enemy doesn't need access to your soul if he can gain agreement through accusation. That's how ambushes are activated, through permission that is often hidden in pain, in fear, or in delay. But God, the righteous judge, has stepped in, and the gavel has fallen. No more debate, no more delays, no more hidden clauses that allowed torment to linger. Heaven has reviewed the evidence, and because of the blood of Jesus, the ruling has come down. Access denied. You are not on trial anymore. You are not trying to earn clearance into a future that already belongs to you. You are not hoping for favor. You are walking under a heavenly decree that cannot be revoked. The accusations the enemy used to whisper in your ear now fall flat. Why? Because heaven has overruled them. Your past cannot testify against your promise anymore. Your weakness cannot outweigh your obedience. And your wounds, yes, even your deepest, most hidden ones have been wrapped in mercy and ruled irrelevant to your calling. This is divine justice. And justice doesn't just release you from bondage, it releases judgment against what bound you. The tormentor that wouldn't let you rest. The fear that echoed every time you tried to move forward. The voice that said, "You're not ready, not worthy, not enough." All of it has been silenced under this ruling. And because the court has ruled, the enemy is now trespassing. If he continues to press in, you must begin to walk with the confidence of one who knows the legal battle is over. This doesn't mean you won't still face resistance, but it means resistance no longer has rights. It means your fight is no longer to be free, it's to enforce the freedom already granted. The court of heaven has never lost a case where Jesus is the advocate. His blood didn't just pardon your sins, it revoked the contracts your pain unknowingly signed. It cancelled the cycles your ancestors couldn't break. It shattered the legal ground the enemy thought he had. And now, You must shift how you see yourself, not as someone begging for breakthrough, not as someone trying to qualify for blessing, but as someone who's been ruled in favor of. There's a boldness required here, not arrogance, but authority, the kind that doesn't come from hype or emotion, but from legal standing, the kind that says, I know what heaven has spoken, and I will not bow to anything less. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 17, No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication is from me, declares the Lord. This is not poetic, it's judicial. You are not just protected, you are vindicated. And vindication changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you respond to spiritual pressure. It changes how you carry your name, your voice, your assignment. You stop moving as if you're still under review and start moving like one sent with clearance. This ruling has also unlocked restitution, because when heaven rules in favor of the righteous, it doesn't just silence the accuser, it restores what was lost during the trial. The time, the clarity, the strength, the resources, the relationships, even the confidence. You may have walked through the fire barely holding on, but now you emerge with divine repayment. And no, it won't always come the way you expect. It might not come through the people who wounded you, but heaven's justice is creative. It finds channels to deliver compensation that carries weight, not just for your comfort, but for your commissioning. Because rulings come with responsibility. Now that you've been released, now that your name has been cleared, now that your spirit is free, you're being trusted with what was previously withheld. Instruction is coming. Mantles are shifting. The next layer of your assignment is unfolding, and it's coming with weight. So carry it with reverence. Don't rush it. Don't waste it. And don't water it down to make others comfortable. The same ruling that freed you is now assigning you. The same mercy that covered you is now calling you forward. Not to repeat the past, but to go where no one before you dared to walk. Heaven's court has ruled. Walk like it. This is your final warning to obey. Not because God is angry, but because mercy has a rhythm and you're standing in its final beat before the shift. This isn't fear-mongering. This is divine urgency. When heaven speaks repeatedly, it is never out of panic. It is because something in the unseen is moving closer, and the Spirit is giving you one last clear instruction before that movement either lifts you or leaves you behind. You have heard the word. You have felt the confirmation. You have sensed the weight of every section that led you here. And now, heaven waits not to decide if you're chosen, but to see if you will obey while there is still time. Because obedience is not about perfection. It's about position. Delayed obedience in moments like this isn't harmless. It's a surrender of territory. The warfare is intensifying because your next yes is not casual, it's catalytic. If you obey, everything shifts. If you stall, the ambush regains legal ground. Let me say this as clearly as possible. You are one act of obedience away from watching the trap collapse. But heaven cannot do it for you. As declared in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18, verse 32. For I take no pleasure in the death of anyone, declares the sovereign Lord. Repent and live. Do you see it? The warning was not an expression of anger. It was an invitation into life, an inheritance for you and your lineage. Obedience is not only about your deliverance, it's about the next generation's alignment. This is why the enemy has been trying to paralyze you in indecision. Because if he can stall your yes, he can suffocate your impact. He wants you questioning, hesitating, overanalyzing anything but obeying. Because hell doesn't fear how much you hear. It fears the moment you act on what you've heard. You've come too far to turn back now. You've carried too much to abort this breakthrough. The fire you've walked through wasn't to leave you scorched. It was to burn away everything that couldn't go with you into this next place. But that place requires obedience. That conversation you've been delaying, obey. That step you've been avoiding, obey. That release you've been wrestling with, obey. You don't need another confirmation. This is the confirmation. You don't need more clarity, you need more courage. And if you take that one obedient step, grace will meet you mid-stride. The provision will unlock, the peace will flow, the trap will shatter, and your spirit will know, I moved in rhythm with God. Now, I need you to do something. Chosen one, engage with this word. Not just passively, but publicly. Click like to declare agreement. This is not a trend. It's an altar. Let your actions say what your spirit already knows. This word was mine. Comment below. Type it out loud. Yes. Lord. Now. No. These 4 words are more than affirmation. They are spiritual, legal language. They mark the moment in the realm of the spirit where your yes became louder than your fear. Yes. Lord. Now. No. Let the enemy hear it. Let heaven seal it. Let your soul remember it. Every time doubt tries to creep back in, come back to this sentence. Obedience is your weapon, now. And if you haven't already, take 2 seconds and subscribe. This is not about gaining followers. It's about staying connected to prophetic momentum. These words are sent in seasons, and you don't want to miss what heaven is saying next. And finally, if this message broke something open in you, if it unlocked direction, clarity, or fire, so where you've been fed, no pressure, no guilt, just invitation. Your support helps this word reach further. It fuels the work that pushes this sound out to the nations. It allows other chosen ones silent, wandering, desperate to encounter the same truth you're reading right now. If God stirs your heart to give, obey, even in that, because obedience breaks more than chains, it unlocks doors. Let's be real, this isn't just a video. This is a divine courtroom session, a prophetic warning, a spiritual release. And it's not something you liked. It's something you're living into. This is your final warning to obey, not because the door is closing in anger, but because a new door is about to open in glory, and only obedience can carry you through it. Comment, yes. Lord. Now, let your yes echo beyond this screen, into the heavens where your name is already known. Your end-time assignment requires accuracy, not just passion, not just prayer, not just spiritual gifts. In this hour, God is not merely calling the willing, He is positioning the precise, the ones who not only discern the season, but move in sync with it. Because what's coming isn't just revival, it's realignment. And realignment requires people who are not just ready, but accurate. You've been marked for something weighty, and with that weight comes divine expectation. This is not pressure, it's stewardship. Heaven is trusting you not just with information, but with divine strategy. And if your steps are off, if your timing is late, if your obedience is vague, you risk carrying an anointing that never fulfills its assignment. The time for vague obedience is over. This next part of your life cannot be built on instinct alone. It must be constructed with precision. Not every opportunity is a door. Not every voice is a confirmation. Not every delay is demonic. And not every invitation is divine. The enemy doesn't always come as opposition. Sometimes he comes as options. Distractions dressed as open doors. Emotional impulses that imitate urgency. Platforms that pull you out of position just when you're about to be activated. That's why discernment is no longer optional. It's survival. You don't just need to know what God is doing. You need to know what God is doing with you. Otherwise, you'll spend your life applauding other people's movements while forfeiting your own. You'll celebrate prophetic fulfillment in someone else's life while delaying the instructions that were assigned to yours. And that delay is not without consequence. When your life carries this level of calling, imprecision becomes disobedience. You can't afford to move on assumptions. You need divine alignment. Not just emotionally, not just spiritually, practically, prophetically, daily. And this is where many of the chosen fall short. Not in their faith, but in their focus. They're gifted, but scattered, called, distracted, anointed, but emotionally entangled in places they were only supposed to pass through. And when you confuse emotional loyalty with spiritual assignment, you delay the very thing you were sent to birth. This is why God has been stripping certain connections. It's why the things that used to feed you now leave you empty. Why certain people don't feel safe anymore. It's not bitterness, it's precision. God is reducing the noise around you so you can hear clearly again. He's removing what doesn't align with your next move, because your next move is too crucial to be contaminated. You're stepping into a window that only opens for those who are accurate in the spirit. That means there's no more space for passivity. No more room for maybe. No more time for waiting on signs when the word has already been made clear. It is spoken in the first book of Chronicles, chapter 12, verse 32, from the tribe of Issachar. Men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do, 200 chiefs, with all their relatives under their command. Understanding the time is not enough. You must know what to do. There are many who sense the shift, but only the accurate will survive it. Only those who move in rhythm with God will walk through the storm without compromise. This is not fear, it's formation. God is forming you into someone who doesn't flinch in spiritual battle. Someone who moves with accuracy when the pressure increases. Someone who discerns not just deception, but timing, placement, and voice. You must know the difference between movement and momentum, between noise and instruction, between the feeling of purpose and the voice of God. He is not asking for perfection. He is demanding alignment, and the time to drift is over. You've walked through enough cycles. You've already seen what happens when you delay. You've already felt the cost of half obedience. And now, heaven is saying, it's time to sharpen. Your prayer life must sharpen. Your circle must sharpen. Your habits. Your vision. Your thought patterns, they must align with where God is taking you, not where you've been. Because this time, you're not just being anointed, you're being released. You're not just carrying oil, you're carrying blueprints. You're not just being preserved, You're being positioned. And that position demands clarity. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone can walk with you here. And that's okay. Accuracy often looks like isolation in the beginning, but that isolation is training ground. It's where heaven teaches you how to see without filters, how to hear without interference, how to move without applause. You were not made for the masses. You were made for the mission. And this mission cannot afford missteps. This is not rehearsal. This is deployment. So move with fear of the Lord. Move with confidence. Move with clarity. You were not just chosen. You were measured and found ready. You will not be taken out. That's the final word. Not the attack. Not the betrayal. Not the ambush. Not the lies whispered in the dark or the thoughts that tried to spiral in your head at night. None of it has the final say. Because what God authored in your life, hell cannot erase. What He breathed into your spirit, no demonic resistance can cancel. You've been through too much, lost too much, endured too much for this to be where it ends. You were not kept through all those battles just to be destroyed now. You didn't survive all those delays just to lose in the last round. What's been forming in you was never built to be crushed. It was built to endure. And now, in this hour, endurance is rising as your mantle. The enemy thought if he couldn't break you through temptation, he'd bury you under exhaustion. If he couldn't destroy you with the obvious, he'd drain you with the subtle. That's what this entire spiritual ambush has been. A long game of erosion. Erode your faith. Erode your confidence. Erode your fire. Little by little. Day by day. But instead of being eroded, you became anchored. You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And now, the strength that heaven placed in you before you were born is rising to the surface. Not the kind of strength that shows up in pride or volume, but the kind of strength that remains when the silence is heavy, the kind that keeps standing when the crowd is gone, the kind that keeps building when no one claps. That's the strength of the chosen, and it's in you. Even now, while the enemy hoped this final blow would finish you, heaven is using it to forge you. You're being sharpened, not because you were soft, but because your next season requires a weapon, not a wound. You are that weapon. You're not just surviving the ambush, you're becoming its undoing. What was meant to trap you is now teaching you. What was supposed to silence you is now refining your sound. What was sent to scatter you is now unlocking your spiritual center, and from that center, you will not be moved. It is written in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 8 and 9, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Oh no, that's not a poetic phrase. That is a prophetic identity. It's what's been echoing in your life, even if you didn't have words for it. You've been pressed, but not crushed, knocked down, but not destroyed, confused, but never disconnected. And now, the confusion is clearing. Now, the warfare is being redefined as evidence of your calling. Now, the pressure is proof that the oil in you is real, because fake vessels don't get attacked like this. Empty people don't provoke hell like this. If you weren't carrying something dangerous to darkness, you wouldn't be facing this level of calculated resistance. But here you are, still breathing, still believing, still burning. That's not weakness. That's proof. That's testimony. That's your yes in motion. You will not be taken out. Not by this ambush. Not by the whisper of old lies. Not by the reappearance of cycles you've already broken. Not by guilt from your past or confusion about your future. You are anchored in something that cannot be stolen. And now, you're not just standing, you're advancing. You're not just escaping, you're establishing. You're not just healing, you're activating. Every battle you've walked through has prepared you to become a safe place for others. Every tear you cried in silence is now oil that anoints others in public. The moments where you thought you were breaking were actually moments where your foundations were being poured in fire. That's why you've been misunderstood. That's why the warfare hasn't matched your visible progress. Because what's happening in you has been underground. God was growing roots when everyone else was chasing fruit. But now, the roots are deep, and when the wind comes again, you won't bend, you'll stand taller. This is not the end of your story. This is the release of your next chapter. You're stepping out of reaction and into reign. You're stepping out of delay and into divine timing. You're stepping out of the wilderness, not limping, but leading. Because when God chooses someone, He never sends them back the same. You've faced the ambush. You've endured the heat. And now, you rise, not because you weren't attacked, but because you could not be destroyed. The ones who watch you now will say, I thought that should have taken them out. And heaven will respond, I made sure it didn't. And you are God's chosen one. And chosen ones don't fall to traps. They rise from them. Chosen one. If you've made it this far, it's not just because you were curious. It's because your spirit was summoned. Every word spoken was a confirmation of what you've already felt, what you've already seen, in glimpses but couldn't quite name. But now, the ambush has been exposed. The assignment against you has been dismantled. And more importantly, you have been realigned with heaven's command. This wasn't just a message. This was a mantle, a prophetic release tailor-made for your spirit. And now, what you do with it matters. So here's what I invite you to do next. Click like, let that action serve as agreement with the word. Let heaven see your yes. Comment below with what struck your spirit most. Your comment could spark someone else's breakthrough. Share this message with one person you know is in a silent battle. Let them know they're not crazy. They're under attack and God is calling them out. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because this isn't a one-time word. It's part of an unfolding rhythm, prophetic direction, timely warnings, and powerful confirmations meant to keep you spiritually sharp in these final days. And yes, if this message blessed you, consider sowing into it, not from pressure, but from revelation. Every seed helps us push this sound further into the ears of those who would never hear it otherwise. Some are one message away from survival, and your obedience makes that possible. You are not ordinary. You are not wandering. You are God's chosen one. And everything changes from here.